tanker off the coast of Venezuela for the second time in less than 2 weeks, as President Donald Trump continues to ramp up pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. We have an assessment. U.S. investigators search for motive in murders of 2 Brown University students and a physics professor in Massachusetts in separate but linked attacks after the prime suspect was found dead. We have analysis. A Russian general has been killed after explosive device was detonated underneath his car in southern Moscow. And in Nigeria, Niger State Governor Mohammed Bago promises to review security situation in schools across the state after the remaining abducted 130 school children and teachers regained their freedom. Hello and welcome once again. We're starting with this story that the U.S. Coast Guard is pursuing an oil tanker Bella 1 in international waters near Venezuela, marking the third such operation in 2 weeks. This is as President Donald Trump's administration tightens its crackdown on the country's oil industry. The tanker was sailing toward Venezuela to pick up oil. It is under U.S. sanctions for links to Iranian oil. American officials view it as a part of the shadow fleet that transports oil from sanctioned nations, and a warrant had been issued for its seizure. When U.S. Coast Guard personnel attempted to board the ship, the vessel kept sailing, leading to the pursuit. President Trump last week announced a blockade of all oil tankers on the sanctions entering and leaving Venezuela. The U.S. Justice Department has removed several items from the newly released Epstein files, including a photo showing President Donald Trump citing concerns raised by victims. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said the image was flagged for review because it contained unredacted photos of women and was taken down temporarily out of caution. The department later restored the image, saying no Epstein victims were depicted. At least 13 other files remain missing from the website, drawing criticism from Democrats who questioned the move and demanded transparency. Blanche rejected claims that the removal was linked to Trump, insisting the action was solely about protecting victims' rights as required by court orders. A pair of U.S. lawmakers have threatened legal action against U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi after her deadline to release all government files related to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein was met only in part.
Just put out the files and stop redacting names that don't need to be redacted. It's just, who are we trying to protect? Are we protecting the survivors, or are we protecting these elite men that need to be put out there? And people need to know these are predators that are in the files. They need to be brought to justice so they can stop doing this in the long run. It's for everyone's safety at the end of the day. I haven't gone through all of it, so I don't want to speak. I don't want to say the wrong things, but I do understand that also a lot of important, people have been redacted from it. And the whole process of being transparent was to only redact the survivors and the victims' names. So here we are right where we started with the first files. These names that need to be put out there, people need to know about these people, have been redacted. So it's a little bit confusing. I feel like, again, the DOJ, the justice system, is failing us.
Well, the Trump administration is recalling nearly 30 career diplomats from ambassadorial and senior embassy posts as part of a broader effort to align U.S. foreign representation with the president's America First agenda. Officials said the affected diplomats serving in 29 countries were informed last week that their tenures would end in January. They are not losing their foreign service positions but will return to Washington for reassignment if they choose. The personnel changes hit Africa hardest, with ambassadors in 13 countries affected, followed by 6 in Asia and 4 in Europe. The State Department defended the move as a routine part of any administration, noting that ambassadors are the president's personal representatives abroad. Well, to discuss this further, joining me on the line from Vermont, Arise special correspondent James Blue. James Blue, glad to have you join me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yeah, good. I can. I can. All right, let's start with the issue of the Venezuela imbroglio before we get to other things. The U.S. has seized two Venezuelan oil tankers and are pursuing one as we speak. Whether they have caught it, one doesn't know. What more can you tell us about this action of the U.S.?
Well, it's definitely an escalation. The United States is really trying to demonstrate to Venezuela and the entire region the way in which it intends to control that area of the world. The United States is very clearly trying to place pressure on President Maduro. President Maduro and President Trump have spoken. We do not know the details of that conversation. It could be that this is sort of planned and this is what the presidents discuss. We just don't know. There was an oil tanker that was moving into Venezuela, the Bella One. It is a sanctioned tanker, and it was pursued by the U.S. yesterday. We don't know the exact status of that vessel. But then, last week there was the skipper that was seized. That was on the 10th. And then earlier this month, the Centuries was seized. So this is a real escalated campaign to try to control the in and outbound flow of oil. One very interesting thing to note, not all of the ships that have been seized have been U.S. sanctioned. And that is really where some people are saying the U.S. is acting outside the law. These are operations that are largely run by the U.S. Coast Guard with assistance from the U.S. military. At the moment, the U.S. military has its largest sort of ever armada in the waters of the Caribbean. And this is leading some to believe that there is a action that is going to be planned or announced within this region very soon. We have just gotten notice that President Trump and the head of the Department of War, as we know, the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth, are going to make an announcement this afternoon in Florida. And so we are now waiting to see exactly what is going to be announced. But this could be more details about the operations in and around the waters of Venezuela. Who knows?
All right, you mentioned vessels that are not sanctioned. And of course, the question of Iran, will come to that a little bit this program. But what's the ultimate goal of President Donald Trump? Is it regime change or to destroy the economy of Venezuela? Of course, the economy is dependent on oil.
That's a very good question. There have been a lot of reasons given. President Trump has said that Venezuela has property that was stolen from the US, and this is an attempt to get that property back. He may be referencing the nationalization of the oil industry in Venezuela, which happened in the 1950s. I will note that one of the largest producers in Venezuela is a U.S. company. I believe that's Citgo, and they're still pumping oil in out of Venezuela and into the United States, and they're doing so without any calamity. So some say it's to get these, repair for the things that have been stolen from the U.S. Others have suggested that it is to bring down Maduro. And one of the reasons for bringing down Maduro is that they're suggesting Maduro is part of a large multinational drug operation, and that the transit of those drugs are killing and harming Americans. It's really not very clear the extent to which very lethal drugs are coming from Venezuela. As you know, fentanyl is one of the big, big worries for the American market and for its potential overdose ability. But it turns out very little fentanyl comes from Venezuela. So there have been a number of reasons given. We don't know the exact precise reason. I'm confident there's more than one. But at this point, again, perhaps this press conference this afternoon will reveal exactly what the U.S. Plans in the region actually are.
As the situation escalates, Senator Rand Paul says that he seriously hopes that this does not dovetail into a war with Venezuela. He's against American soldiers being made to go to war because of this issue.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there is a very, probable chance that the U.S. will go to some type of war. What we don't know is how, if at all, Venezuela will retaliate and resist U.S. Potential actions. Venezuela does have a military. Venezuela does have a navy. They have an air force. Those structures are very, very weak because they haven't had a lot of money to put into their defenses. Just a few days ago, the leading opposition leader in Venezuela, who was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, was able to get out of the country, get to Europe. She did not make the prize ceremony, but with the assistance of U.S. Military, she was able to get out of the country and escape. That is an indicator of how sort of slack and lack things are that someone of that high profile was able to escape and get out of the country. Who knows what's going to happen moving forward? I do think that the United States would be very, very careful about launching a war within Venezuela, and the grounds of any such war, I think, would be very narrow. As you mentioned, a lot of these ships have been seized in international waters, which makes it very difficult because they're no longer within the Venezuelan territory. And I also think the sort of rationale for conflict has to be really solid. And I'm not exactly sure the US feels that they have that solid ground just yet. We may learn more this afternoon in the press conference that's planned between President Trump and Secretary of War Hegseth, but we will just have to sort of wait. But there certainly seems to be escalating tensions between the US and Venezuelan boats. Whether that escalates and increases to include Venezuelan troops and actual Venezuelan aircraft and personnel, we don't know. But right now, the war has been contained to the oil sector that is serving Venezuela.
International experts, before we just, while we'll get to Epstein and the Epstein files, but international experts are warning about boarding non-sanctioned vessels in international waters. Will this count? How much can this go? How far, rather, can this go, if at all, to curtail Trump's actions against Venezuela boats?
I'm not sure there's much that can curtail the administration. They seem very, very determined to change things within Venezuela. And because there's very little opposition, what is the countervailing force? Are people going to take them to the international court? Possibly, but as you may know, the U.S. is not a member of the ICC. So it is a really very precarious situation in that the U.S. is sort of able to do what it wants to do almost without impunity, which is a very, very dangerous thing.
I just took the words out of my mouth. Very dangerous when they can do anything they very well want to do. Now let's talk about Epstein. Pan Bondi, the Attorney General, is being accused of breaking. I hope you're still there.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, Pan Bondi is being accused of breaking the law on Epstein files. What more do we know about the claim by Todd Blanche? It says that they're trying to protect he defends the redacting, saying they're trying to protect the victims. Does it add up?
So there have been a lot of reasons for the Justice Department to sort of play games, to delay, to redact, and to do other things that have really impeded the distribution of these files that were made public by law, a law that President Trump signed. So, what has happened, and what you're referring to most specifically, there are 15 photos that were initially released that were part of the overall release that were actually taken away from the site at some point. These photos contain President Trump, and the Department of Justice said that they were taken down because there had been complaints by the victims that these photos should not be up. And so that is the claim that the Justice Department is making, and they have subsequently been returned. There was a real sense that these photos were taken down because they were injurious or somehow showed President Donald Trump in a bad light. We don't know if that was the case, but we do know that they were taken down and they have now been replaced. The bigger problem, and I think this is a much larger problem, there are stacks and stacks and stacks of documents. And I just think the system to move them into circulation on this Justice Department website has just been very, very slow. And so there's some members of Congress who think there should be inherent contempt charges brought against the Attorney General Pam Bondi for violating the transparency law. This law was last used in 1930, and it would fine Pam Bondi daily, requiring her to stay within the building of the House because she has not given over some of the details that the members of the House feel are required to comply with this law. This is a really, really bad project for the president. His MAGA base has come out fully in square of support in trying to get these files released. It turns out many of the folks who he has sort of turned against, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they've broken up over this issue. So this is a very big and important issue for the base, the MAGA base, and we'll just go see how important it becomes moving forward as things are revealed. But there are a lot of redactions, there are a lot of pages missing, and it's just voluminous amounts of material to get through. Eventually, it will get there. And the question is, will it have any sort of lasting impact on the president and his political standing? We just don't know yet.
Yeah, you talked about Marjorie Greene there and Representative Massey, and one of the who have been in the forefront of all this. And then there's the question of cover-up allegations because the Trump pictures were removed and later brought back. But we'll leave it there and see what gives as we watch this drama, if you like, unfold. All right, Special Correspondent James Blue, thank you so much for being on The World.
Thank you.